Thank you. Great to be here today. I've been really enjoying the presentations, and thanks for everybody coming out. So as Mark said, for more than 20 years now, I've been an outdoor writer, editor, photographer, ski guide, and avalanche educator. I was editor-in-chief of Backcountry Magazine for 7 years, managing editor of skiing, and I founded Big Sky Backcountry Guides in Belle Cure 13 years ago. I'm super grateful for all these opportunities that I've had, including the opportunity to speak here today. And when Dave and I began talking about the theme for this year's workshop, I was super excited. Thinking about all the different inflection points we've all had throughout our careers, all of the meaningful experiences that we've had that have helped shape our careers and attitudes towards the mountains. But for me, it always comes down to people. I've been extremely fortunate to combine multiple dream careers, spend my life in the mountains, and not only meet, but ski, climb, and collaborate with many of my all-time heroes. People who I admire and emulate both personally and professionally. Unfortunately, I've also published memorials to honor the deaths of too many of these same people. So let's talk about our heroes, admiration, emulation, and the reality of accepting risk in the mountains. And as a caveat, these are just my experiences and opinions. No authority, competence, or wisdom is implied. So this is Mr. Tom Youngst with Saddle Peak in the background there. We all have heroes, people who represent ideals we admire and inspire us to seek those ideals for ourselves. I know that the trajectory of my life was dramatically changed by my admiration for and emulation of my ski heroes, people I didn't know but felt connected to through the sport. Specifically, and for people of a certain age, Bozeman legends like Doug Coombs, Hans Sari, Tom Youngst, Jim Conway, and Alex Lowe were why I moved to Montana. I know I'm not alone in that. I wanted to be where the action was and do the things that these guys made look so cool in the magazines and movies. This was pre-social media, almost pre-internet for you youths. There's maybe no better feeling than to be inspired, and that's what heroes do for us. They inspire us to push further and learn, try new things, and dream bigger than we would have without their influence. Mine inspired the hell out of 17-year-old me. I never intended to be a writer, and certainly never dreamed of being a ski guide. I came to MSU to be an engineer, and graduated 5 years and 4 major changes later with a degree in English. It's the Bobcat way. But I skied an awful lot and found that I could make a living by writing about it, which was a total revelation in itself. It began with an essay published in Backcountry Magazine in 2005, which, long story, led to a job in 2006. And I was still a student and 21 years old. I was living my absolute dream, a ski magazine editor, immersed in all things skiing and mountaineering, with access to my heroes, some of whom I didn't even know were my heroes yet, and a ticket to ski anywhere in the world, which I did. I was starstruck and hungry to prove myself both in print and in the mountains. My first feature assignment, however, was to help write a memorial for Doug Coombs, who passed away 20 years ago, this last Friday, April 3rd, 2006. Coombs was everyone's hero. He was the best skier in the world, a film star, a guy who helped invent Alaska heli skiing, and a 48-year-old IFMGA certified mountain guide who'd forgotten more about moving through the mountains than I, a kid at the time, could ever hope to learn. As my editorial team poured through the archives, talked with his partners and friends, and assembled a story that we knew couldn't possibly capture the impact that Coombs had made on the sport, I had my first taste of a cognitive dissonance that follows me to this day. It turns out that even Doug, everyone's hero, a revered guide at the top of his craft, who'd managed crazy risk for 30 years, was fallible. He died not on some wild expedition, but during a day of pleasure skiing with his friends. As a young, ambitious skier who wanted nothing more than to chase the kinds of lines that Doug popularized and made look so cool, it begged the question, what chance can the rest of us have? Until that critical inflection point, With the stories told to me by his friends fresh in my ears, staring at his most iconic photos spread across my desk, photos that I'd stapled to my wall as a kid growing up, and which had inspired so many of my choices to be there, Death in the Mountains didn't feel real, and it hadn't touched me personally. I thought that with enough skill and training and experience, it might be possible to do things like Coombs or Alex Lowe or Craig Kelly. Maybe not at their level, but something close, maybe. They inspired emulation. Doug was the example. From my perspective at the time, it felt like he'd made it, somehow solved the risk puzzle. But there we were publishing his tribute. And it wasn't just me. His death became an inflection point for many people in this room, I'm sure. I think that what it made us feel, some of us for the first time, was the vastness of the divide between admiration and emulation, between our heroes, ourselves, and reality. Since then, we've lost a lot more people who I've admired deeply and in many ways tried to emulate in my careers. I've worked on more memorials than I'd like to remember, some for people who I called friends and mentors. And the fundamental question remains, if these people, mostly more skilled, more experienced, more capable than I, are dying in the mountains, what does that mean? And it's part of what led me to guiding almost 15 years ago. I wanted to understand, and still do. And Coombs, the consummate guide, remains an inspiration, but in a different way than he once did. And I see this same struggle in many of my clients and Avalanche course students and some of my young employees, especially the most ambitious ones. The eagerness to get enough training, enough experience, enough skill to earn a license to go do the rad in the mountains. But there is no license, there's only risk. And in certain terrain, under certain circumstances, it is less about training or skill or experience and more about luck. That's the reality, even for heroes. So, what's the point? I'm so grateful to people like Coombs. I'm glad there are people doing things that inspire us. It's important. We need it now in this world more than ever. There will always be those who push boundaries, do new things, and make us feel wonder. And that's awesome. We should celebrate our heroes often and early. But inspiration comes at a cost that I haven't found a way to reconcile. And in my experience, emulating our heroes can be a painful double-edged sword with rich rewards and devastating consequences. I don't know how best to wrap this up, and I'm better in print than I am in person. So I'd like to read an editor's note that I published all the way back in 2011 about one of my Bozeman heroes. And I think it's still relevant today. Thanks for listening. It's called the butterfly effect. The concept that a butterfly flapping its wings on one side of the world could affect the trajectory of a tornado on the other. The essence of this idea is that everything is connected, and that a small action can produce a huge reaction. The subtle drop in temperature that begins a winter, the single snowflake that triggers an avalanche, the stranger who somehow changes the course of your life. I never met the late Hansari, but he's one of the people who led me to this page. He was a world-class ski mountaineer, but also a talented writer. His words were thoughtful, intelligent, and artful. They appealed to readers, not just skiers. But what set his work apart most was authenticity. He wrote what he lived, and in a world that is increasingly distracted by appearances and superfluity, the honesty of his words and his life spoke to me. I moved to Bozeman, Montana, Hans's hometown, a year after his tragic fall. I was there for college, preparing to become an engineer, and while I loved to write, it seemed like something only other people could do as a career. People more skilled, people more experienced, people who possessed a voice, people like Hans. So I read the work he left behind and began to ski many of the same lines that he did, and my perception of skiing and writing began to change. And I began to believe that someday I too might write, if not ski, like him. And like parallel tracks cutting through this deep snow, writing and skiing became my life. It seems unlikely that a stranger could have impacted my life and career in such a fundamental way. But words have souls, and unlike our heroes, they live forever. And when they're written well, they show us paths that might otherwise go untraveled. Thanks, Hans, for helping me see the way. Any questions?
You and I both spoke of emulation a little bit. You bring up an interesting point there, talking about the double-edged sword of emulation. When we make an example out of people we think are doing a good job, we showcase that, we try to draw attention to that. Where do you think we overstep that? When was that turn into the other side of the sword? You from a publishing perspective.
Yeah, thanks. For those of you who might not have heard that, talking about emulation as a double-edged sword, when might we sort of, it stop being a positive thing, go from a very positive thing into more of a harmful thing? You know, as far as from a media standpoint, a public figure standpoint, I think it's a fine line, right? We want to inspire. I think we all want to feel inspired. And definitely the level at which skiing and writing are at now has never been higher. The bar is incredibly high and the consequences are incredibly high. So how do you balance inspiration with a positive message of learning and mentorship and taking baby steps towards those goals? I don't know. I do think that we've seen a pendulum swing in the way it's represented in media, ski, you know, whatever it may be, ski media, movies, whatever, where it was like go big or go home for the longest time. And unfortunately, we lost an awful lot of heroic people doing those types of things. But it's sort of a you know it when you see it type thing for me. But it's something that I think all of us as snow professionals should balance in the way that we're presenting information, the way that we think about what we're doing, and particularly if we're teaching or mentoring younger people, or not necessarily younger, just less experienced, keeping that double-edged sword in mind.
You got to talk about social media.
Social media. Great. Well, other than destroying my writing career, no, social media, obviously incredibly powerful tool, powerful messaging, ever present, good or bad. I mean, I hate it. I think everything that's bad that's happening in the world is due to social media. But it's also, I'm old, I guess. But I do think that there is a lot of opportunity there, and I think that when it's used properly, as in talking about accidents or near misses in frank and honest terms, which is particularly difficult with social media, I think it can be super powerful, but it's something I haven't figured out. I know that it's a poison in the sense of we're given these sound bites without context that we can neither learn from nor serve any purpose beyond promotion most of the time. And so when I see a really good one, that's a really good tool, then it's pretty impressive. But most of the time, I look at it as more damaging than anything. That's just me. Again, wisdom not implied.
Drew, knowing what you know about risk and having seen and losing people throughout your career, how has that changed your new career as a guide service owner?
Great question. I think.
Not so new anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, the question of risk is the central one to everything we do, whether it's recreational or professional. I think the bar just moves when you're managing other people's risk. And so I certainly would never tell anybody not to take risks. Just be aware of what you're getting into. And when you're managing other people's risks, that bar drops quite a ways. The other thing is that as a backcountry ski guide, it's a little bit different than our patrollers or mitigation professionals. We're cowards. We just run away. That's what I love about it. I can just run away, go ski something else. I don't have to go on route and make avalanches for my job, you know? And so, you know, that's how I've always approached it. And I think that as far as being a guide service owner, creating a culture that is very open and feels safe for the guides and the clients is the #1 thing. Powder skiing is secondary, always.